Newman.
It's a Wild Wednesday here on KFAN. We're taking your talkbacks for tickets all day long. Use the talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. Tell us who on the Wild is due for a breakout game. Winners will be selected all day for Wild Red Wings tickets tomorrow. Get all the details, KFAN.com, keyword contest.
Kevin Seifert, here's my theory on the reaction to the twin pass interference calls that helped Denver on their game-winning drive. And here's what's interesting about it to me. I reacted to a tweet from Tommy Kramer. Kramer was very unhappy, basically said, the old let the players play. What are you doing? Right. You can't call two pass interference penalties. Here's my theory on the pass interference penalties. I, like you, thought the first one was quite questionable.
Yeah.
I thought the second one was easy.
Yeah.
But what happens mentally to people is they're kind of frustrated by the first one. And then they say, well, you can't do two of them. And so, in effect, what you're asking the refs to do on the second one is, we gave them a borderline one. I'm going to let this one go. And it's just this sense of you can't give two pass interference penalties there. And I don't disagree, again, on the first one, but to me, the second one was an easy call.
Well, and it's also the larger thought that we can't let officials determine the outcome of the game. Like, the officials want to be the stars, yes, and they want to be the guys that decide. Guess what? Officials are part of determining the outcome of every game and every team sport that there is, whether it's baseball, basketball, hockey.
Every quarter.
Volleyball, tennis, any. I mean, that's just the compact of a competitive pro game or a college game, is that there's two teams and the officials, and all three of those groups determine the outcome of the game in some way, shape, or form. So to not call the second one would have been doubling down on the mistake of the first one. And so that you have to view each of those as separate plays. But I do agree, the first one was, they said it was a restriction, arm restriction, and he barely grabbed it. And so, this happens. Sometimes the subjective nature of it means that, and if anything, it meant that the next one was not going to be called unless it was egregious, and it happened to be egregious.
I would also say, what do we all hear, and what did we hear again after that game? Well, why, as the game goes on, do the referees the officials call it different? And my comeback to that Sunday was, have you ever considered the possibility that sometimes the players defend it different, or they're a little more desperate because there's more on the line, and that conveniently gets left out of the discussion because of all the attention we want to put on the zebras.
And are they really calling it different? Because to say, objectively that they're calling it different would mean that you've cataloged all the plays up until that point.
And you didn't.
And did you watch them all closely? Was there a restriction? Was it forcible or defense? Yeah. And so there's definitely a perception. There's more eyes on the game at the end. There's more impact put on, even during the broadcast, if in the first quarter of a game there's a controversial incompletion and some people think it was pass interference and some people think it doesn't, it's forgotten by the time you come back from commercial because the rest of the game still happens. And so you would have to do a really thorough, extensive study to be able to say with any authority or credibility that they call it differently at the end, or that they're trying to influence the outcome, when it's quite possible you might not have been paying quite as much attention during it the early. And this is not to say that they never make mistakes, or that they never overstep their bounds, because they certainly do. I don't want it to be blanket defense of officiating, but there's a lot of different things that go into people's reactions to these particular calls, and the fact that all the ones that people remember are the ones that happen in overtime is sort of a testament to that.
You're getting ripped.
Of course.
Can you ask Kevin on the interception call why there is such a need to come out and say that it was absolutely the right call, rather than just saying it was a really close call, so therefore we stuck with a call on the field? I think that narrative that keeps coming out from officials makes it feel like we're getting gaslit when you see many close calls like this always being upheld, which is an understandable take, in my opinion. What would you say to 612 guy?
I think there's an important distinction to be made between what a reasonable person sees when a play plays out and thinks the call should be, and what the rule book says the call should be. Yeah. Sometimes the the beef is with the way the rule is, and we can talk about why the catch rule is the way it is. And I know people are upset if I say, well, this one wasn't even particularly close, but there's three elements of a catch. When you have control of the ball, when you're in bounds, and then there's a time element. And when somebody's going to the ground, like Brandon Cooks was in this particular case, he has to hold on to the ball throughout the process of the catch. And the process ends when he's down by contact. And before he was down by contact in that play, the ball transferred from him to the Denver defensive back. And so he didn't complete the process of the catch, even though we as reasonable people can look at it and say, well, he had the ball
as he went down.
And
right.
I get why people are saying that, but doesn't line up with the way they have it set up in the rule book. And it's set up that way to make in the NFL's minds a consistent set of standards for the two basic ways you can make a catch, by when you catch and you're still standing afterwards, and when you make a catch and you're going to the ground. And so they have attempted to craft a rule that standardizes the expectations for both cases, and that's why you have to maintain the ball until you're down by contact, essentially. And he did not do that, and so that by rule that meant that it was an interception because the ball never touched the ground during the transfer. Now, does the NFL do itself any favors by its lack of transparency and its interest in moving along without making an explanation? Absolutely not.
That's what hurt. Yeah.
They have been moving away from transparency. I mean, there used to be a time, and you remember this, when officials would kind of blather on for a little while when they would announce a penalty. It wouldn't just be, personal foul, Dan Barreiro, 15 yards, first down. There would be an explanation for why it was a personal foul. Roughing the passer, they might tell you it's because he, went low on him.
Giving him the business.
Or giving him the business.
Ones, right?
Yeah.
Alan, yeah.
Jim Tunney, was that who it was?
Yeah.
And so they have told referees, less is more. Don't, we're trying to move the game along, number one, and we don't want you to say something that might be imprecise and then can be used against you. We'll wait until the next morning when we'll put Walt Anderson on NFL Network to explain it to everyone. And they also have this procedure policy where if it's a game where there's a rules analyst in the booth or in New York, or in the case of Fox in Los Angeles, they have a hotline between the command center in New York and that guy, and they'll tell Dean Blandino or whoever, this is why we made this decision, and then he can repeat that. But I don't know how many people even realize that exists, and that what Dean Blandino is saying is actually kind of supposed to be mirroring
right.
the thought process of the NFL. So, we've seen, I know you're a big UFL guy, XFL.
Yeah.
We've seen that they have, and the CFL does this also, experimented with televising the actual
deliberations
process of it. So that everybody knows what they're looking at and why they decided what they decided. And so there's other ways to be more transparent, whether it's the referee explaining in the old days with replay, you would see the referee would actually say, upon review, the receiver did not, touch he touched the end line before the ball hit. And sometimes you hear that and sometimes you don't. And so the times that you don't, there's understandably a lot of people upset with how it plays out.
I would argue those leagues have a lot less to lose.
Yeah.
So it's easier for them to be with it and wow. But I'll also add, I think we talked about this earlier in the week. It's an interesting trend by the NFL, and it's contrary to what I observe from the NBA during replays and reviews, where, in fact, it's almost become high art, and not all referees are as good at this as others, but some of them lay out with great precision and detail exactly what happened on that play, and this is why we concluded and ended up with the call on raising it to a flagrant or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually, now, again, you're still going to have people disagreeing, but I think that's actually helpful.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people say, well, in this age of gambling, you can't have people guessing what the wizard behind the curtain is doing. You have to be explaining it, and you have to be showing it. And to me, like, whether it's gambling or not, there's still some people who are just watching games because they're a fan of the team or they're a fan of the players, and they want their team or their player to win, and they're upset that they can't figure out why a call was made the way it was made. And so whether it's for gambling reasons or, for just really just being like treating your audience as adults and not just making them swallow. Yeah. Because the rule in this, we were just talking through the catch rule, like you can explain it, but not everybody, but you can't expect people to have, once you've explained it once, to have it in their heads and to know, like how many people are talking about the process of the catch, it just treat them like adults,
Couldn't agree more.
You might not like the way it is, but like, here's why it is. And then
you're not going to buy everybody over. You're not going to bring everybody over anyway, but at least you can say, we're not running from this.
Yeah. No, it's like, you're not in the absence of information.
Yes.
Swells, flows conspiracy.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And we have all participated in that in some cases. And so, but even just, watching this press conference today with the Bills and the Bills owner who's blaming a bad call for why they lost in Denver. And I don't know, I think he was referring to the interception. Maybe
wasn't the comeback, if that's what he believes, why do you fire the coach then?
Yeah. That's
you want to narrow it to that one thing.
That was one of many reasons why the press conference maybe wasn't the greatest move that the Bills ever made.
Yeah.
But like even NFL owners don't seem to know the rules. You could say, again, bad rule, but so long story short, I think the more you make it a common point of discussion, the more people I think will understand, and the more you try to move past things and with a minimal explanation, the more people are suspicious.
Very much so. All right, let's do this. We're going to get bonus bucks here in a minute. And then for the last segment for you today, I want you to give us, from your standpoint, what you believe are the top 3 questions facing this franchise, leaving out quarterback, because we've discussed it so much, and maybe even leaving out B-Flow. If you got past those 2, and they're both big, 3 others that you think are key and that you will be following very closely as this offseason continues. Seifert, one more segment. Louie at the bottom of the hour. Kessler in studio at 5:30.
Spent an evening with Jeff Foxworthy, known for his signature "You Might Be a Redneck" jokes. Don't miss out when this Grammy-nominated legend takes the stage at Treasure Island Event Center March 14th. You can secure your tickets today, TICasino.com, TICasino.com.
All right, Kevin Seifert, give me your top 3 stories or, I guess, questions you think you need to be answered that are at the top of the Seifert list beyond the quarterback and beyond the future of Brian Flores in Minnesota.
Well, these were the 3 best I could come up with during the break here. But to me, a major story hanging over the Vikings franchise is Kevin O'Connell a good coach or a great coach? I think we can agree he's a pretty good coach based on the records. 3 winning seasons, one of the few survivors from the 2022 coaching class. Now it's, I think everybody agrees it's time for them to take the next step and start winning playoff games. And so that to me is like a storyline, I think, which is what you're getting at. Yeah,
absolutely.
Another one is, how long is Justin Jefferson's window? We saw indisputably a decline in his numbers. We know that was partially related to the fact that the quarterback play overall was so poor. But he's not going to be the same guy we knew forever. How long do they have until his performance level that he can produce, absent of the quarterback, going to stay at the level that it is? It's not going to be forever. And the third one, it could go a few different ways. The first thing I thought of was, who is going to sort of, assuming that Harrison Smith's retiring, who's going to not just take over the safety position, but sort of be the heartbeat of the defense. I mean, I think we all know that he had a outsized influence in the way that they played. And that's a little bit because of Flores, but not even way before Flores. He was doing that. And, and I guess, 3B question is, can they start drafting better under Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah? They, I went back and checked, and I think we might have talked about this, but they have had, since he started in 2022, they've had 122, I think it's 172 starts by draft picks. That's the second fewest in the NFL. And the range is from like 122 to like almost 600. So there's some teams that have had, what would that be? Almost 4 or 5 times the number of starts from draft picks over that period that the Vikings have. And so it's not purely a draft thing. I mean, there's clearly been some mistakes made, and there's clearly been a lower volume of draft picks as a result of other decisions. But there's also just the synergy of the people they're drafting, people who the coaching staff is eager to play, because we see them in some cases, especially defensively. And this is something on Brian Flores, that they don't play a lot of the young guys. And so either they weren't capable, or it's just has not been part of their program to do it. And so I would say that's also a question storyline that's hovering over them this offseason.
Those are all good. Do we now believe whatever the team is going to do with Jordan Addison, do we believe this latest deal, which has now ended in, I think, the prosecution
charges
dropped, is that going to have, do you think internally they're still going, we don't care, this is too many times, we're going to factor this in? Or do you think they've written that they don't think that's meaningful one way or the other in terms of how they go forward with him?
I mean, I don't think that it's a deal breaker or a deal maker, but it has to be considered in the overall context of what they're planning to do there. You know, he's, just to be clear with everybody, he's had 3 years in, and so he's now eligible for a contract extension if they wanted to give it to him. They could also pick up his 5th year option and have him under contract on his rookie deal for 2 more years and then see what happens. I mean, there's certainly no fear about losing him unless they don't want him anymore. And so they have to decide, would they want to commit to him long term? You know, this has been the case with many players over the years. There's a wide gap between things that reflect poor judgment and things that reflect illegal behavior. And the courts obviously focus on whether something was legal or illegal, but employers certainly think about both of those things. And so I can't imagine that unless absent of this being a case of mistaken identity, that he was not the one who was refusing to leave, but he still got arrested or something, really, really outlandish having been the case, then it at the very least reflects on the overall portrait of his judgment. And again, they're not in a do or die situation with him. You know, the reason to sign somebody after year 3 is to get a better deal than you would if he continues to perform well and then gets closer to free agency. And so you certainly don't have to do that. And unless they could get, that's just one of many options that they could pursue and still, keep doing business with him.
Do you like Naylor enough to say, move him up and we don't have to mess with Addison anymore?
There's a difference between their 2 skill sets. I don't think anyone would argue about that, but Naylor has worked very hard to make himself into a good player, and he is a good player. You'd like to say, sign him and then, Jordan, you don't have to sign Jordan Addison. You can just keep letting him play under his rookie contract. Right. And so that certainly is an option. They drafted Ty Felton in the 3rd round last year, I think, in anticipation of letting Jalen Naylor leave. And so the question is, what would be the number that you could get Jalen Naylor at? And then are you paying him the same thing you would be paying Jordan Addison in a or less or more? And so you have to think about all those terms, but I think he's good enough. There's been enough games where he's been the second receiver and he's been productive next to Justin Jefferson to think that if that's what it came to, they could still be a productive offense. But I also know why they have been so committed to Jordan Addison, because he's the kind of, each team you hope has a handful of difference makers, and he can be a difference maker.
There's no question when he's
I don't
going.
know if Jalen Naylor is a difference maker.
Are we going to have to remake our offensive line again?
I think the center position obviously is something that has to be.
We didn't need Bradbury, by the way.
Yeah. He's in. It was funny watching that game. They had Garrett Bradbury was starting for the Patriots, and the Texans had Ed Ingram starting at right guard, and so.
Is that why? So we end up sacrificing the offensive line coach. Is this on him?
I don't know that they blame everything on him, but there hasn't been a whole lot of development of some of the younger offensive linemen that they've acquired over the past few years, and some of the offensive linemen that they have either given up on or parted ways with have gone on to at least be playing for other teams. And so I think that, and also like people always focus with the offensive line coach on just the offensive line, and the really good offensive line coaches have a lot to do with the run game as well. And I think I know a radio talk show host who's had some concerns about the Vikings run game over the years.
Not familiar with them.
So I think that would potentially reflect at least some of that as well.
I gotcha. Lastly, if B-Flow does go, is there an heir apparent, or is the heir apparent going somewhere else too?
Well, what's been interesting is that Durante Jones, who's the defensive pass game coordinator, but also essentially the defensive backs coach, and was a defense coordinator at LSU before he came here, and he's gotten close with Brian Flores, and Flores really respects him, and so like there's been lots of interest in the league to hire him or to interview him at least as a defensive coordinator in the past 2 years, and so he's interviewed many places. I think he's had 4 maybe interviews this offseason.
That's impressive.
And so.
Yeah.
And I think he would be a strong internal candidate to replace him, but the timing gets interesting. If he really feels like he's ready to be a defensive coordinator, and there's some offers out there, and you could
end up losing him before B-Flow thing gets settled. Right?
Yes, and so and the fact that there hasn't at least been any reported interviews for a defensive coordinator, and maybe they would keep it quiet for obvious reasons, but. The plan B would seem to be him, but I don't know if there's a handshake agreement or something. That there's been a curious lack of public activity at that spot why they let Brian Flores do his thing, except that Kevin O'Connell, every time he's been asked publicly, has expressed extreme confidence that if he doesn't get a head coaching job, he'll be back, but there's no signed deal that I'm aware of.
Appreciate you coming in. I would say for tomorrow, be vigilant around your neighborhood. Make sure you report every exploding tree. It's the responsible thing to do. Help your neighbors. Don't run from it. Don't just curl up in the fetal position. Just be vigilant about exploding trees.
I will let everyone know if that happens.
Thank you. Great stuff. We're not done with you yet, by the way. Season's not over.
It never does.
No, that's the thing. I don't think it's ever going to end.
I mean, it's a Super Bowl still in 2 weeks. We still have There's more games left in the season.
A lot of speculation to get to. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, sir.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. Luigi, who's been tracking, for TV purposes, the Minnesota Wild, who had kind of a, not very helpful finish in Montreal yesterday. We'll talk to Louis about that, and who knows what else. Louis is coming up next here on The Fan.
Well, she sneaks around the world from India to Carolina. She's a sticky-fingered filcher from Berlin down to Belize. She'll take you for a ride on a slow motion China. Tell me, where in the world is
Nanne?
Kemps brings us Luigi each and every week. He joins us now via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Louis, how are you?
Well, I'm okay after the trip from hell.
What happened?
Last night, we finished the game in Montreal and then flew home. I got home at 2 o'clock, and then I had a pickup for the airport, 4:45. People at the airport were saying, "Did you do the game from home last night?" Because I had to fly to Vegas today, so I've had about an hour and a half sleep.
Man, oh man, so you flew back here? And then left
flew to
again?
Minnesota with the team, because it was a better connection. If I had flown from Montreal, I couldn't have got to Vegas.
I understand.
I couldn't have left Montreal till 6 at night.
Well, the good news,
I have a dinner meeting here tonight. So.
The good news for you is, if you want to feel a little better about the lack of sleep, is that looking out the window now, it was like almost blizzard-like conditions about 5 minutes ago. Tonight, it's I should say tomorrow night, I think it's supposed to go down to like minus 19 temperature, high of minus 9 tomorrow, and I think a high similar on Saturday. So you can at least say you're missing, as you often do, you're missing that as well.
Well, and I'm wondering if they're going to be able to play that Hockey Day in Minnesota game.
No?
Don't forget, the high school. I wonder if they're going to stand up and say, if it's minus 9, the wind chill might be around minus
30. Yeah, it's supposed to be. Yeah, the wind is going to be, I think, the problem too. No question about that. Now, you grew up in the Sioux, correct?
Right.
Do you remember, how many occasions do you remember when you guys had to dodge exploding trees in the Sioux?
I don't remember any. No, I haven't seen any.
Well, here's the backdrop. In fact, somebody had texted me. I mentioned exploding trees with Kevin Seifert, and somebody asked if this was an inside joke. It kind of is, kind of isn't. The impetus of this is that a national weather forecaster, I call them, of course, as you know, weather terrorists, yesterday sent out a tweet suggesting that 3 states, including Minnesota, will be in a dangerous exploding tree zone when this Arctic air comes in starting tomorrow. So, like a lot of people, I'm going, exploding trees? I hadn't heard of that sort of thing. And apparently it is possible to happen, but it's a little more rare than the weather guy was suggesting, trying to get a lot of attention, which he did. And I figured, where you are, if there's going to be because it can get pretty cold in the Sioux, correct? In the winter?
Not as cold as Minnesota. That's a difference. We get more snow.
Oh, that's a good point. You're right. Not quite as cold. But anyway, yeah. And what we're told by people who have experienced them is it's not like the tree becomes a weapon. It makes cracking noises, almost like, your house can when it gets really, really cold. You get those. Sometimes it'll get so bitterly cold that you almost hear it almost sounds like a cracking sound. But apparently there's no real danger to being hurt by walking past a tree that is exploding just as you happen to be walking past it.
But it's funny. It was cold like this right after New Year there, and I had a tree at my house just fall. I was in the kitchen. I heard a noise. I said, "What's that?" And this was a big tree, a real big tree, and it fell towards the house, missed the house, and part of it just went up the stairway that goes into the back deck. There was absolutely no damage.
That's lucky, because that can be bad, as you know. That could be really, really bad. Yeah, those trees, and in the winter, like I said, you can, with ice, they can crack. Things can happen. But exploding tree was a new term to me, Louis, that even by weather terrorism standards, I'd never heard before. That was a new one.
Neither have I.
Exploding trees. So I think we're all going to be okay. If we're just vigilant, we're not going to necessarily have to worry about being assaulted by an exploding tree. All right, let's get to, you were on the TV broadcast last night. Give me your assessment of the Wild, very heartbreaking finish for your favorite hockey team. What did you see last night?
Well, last night they almost were playing a little tired to start. They were really not very good in the first period. They got outshot 15-2.
Yep.
But it's not only being outshot, their passing was just terrible. And I'm seeing it was so bad because it was highlighted by how good their passing was the 2 games previous to that in Buffalo and Toronto. They had moved the puck so fast, so well, and so accurately. It was just wonderful to see, and that's why they won 2 big games against 2 teams who were playing really well. And then they started in Montreal, and trying to get out of the zone in the first period was it was a real adventure. They just couldn't complete a pass. And they were lucky to get out of that period the way they did. And they got better. The second period, they outshot Montreal.
Did. Yep.
They started moving the puck a little better. And the third period, they were starting to play a little better, but they seemed more tired. You got 3 games in 4 days at that intensity with the travel. It was affecting them a bit, but they were hanging in there. However, when they got to the last, I looked at the clock, it was 1:28, and I says, they got to just, I'm very concerned about this. They just got to get the puck out properly, get it out quickly. And they just couldn't. They turned over the puck a couple times. They were just late picking up a guy here and there. And so then I started looking for Caulfield because that was his 7th game winner, and he gets the shot off so quick, and he's very accurate. And the one time he kept the puck in earlier than that behind the net, he made a play, and he's a small guy. I wish, they had taken him out harder and not allowed him to get back in the play. But then the puck went around back in the corner, and he just sort of creeped out to the far side. He likes to shoot off the wing, off the pass, and he's either on the right side or left side. Usually he's on the left side in the power play, but his normal time is on the right side. He's a right-hand shot. And he got into his shooting area, and that pass came out from Suzuki and right on his stick, and it was in the net before he could turn.
Tough way to lose.
What's funny? Did you see the 15 seconds, though, how quick?
Yes.
Hughes made a great pass to get the puck up ice.
Yes.
To Zuccarello, who got it to the front of the net to Hartman, and he just missed putting it over the pad in the net. It went just a little wide. Great play.
We're going to get to him in a minute with a little more detail via some texts that have come in. I thought you made an important point late in the broadcast that is a kind of a sneaky, underrated point, which you have been very consistent about over the years. You get to the final minutes, shoot the bleeping puck, put as many pucks on the net or close to the net as possible. Don't be too cute, especially then. I thought that was a great point.
Yeah, you can't pass up any shots when you're at that stage of the game, especially. And if you're tied, obviously you got to get something in the net. Don't pass up anything. And as long as you keep putting the pucks on net, good things going to happen. You can get a goal off the shot, you can get a deflection, a rebound, but you're keeping the puck going that way. And Montreal was doing that late in the game, and I'll tell you, Wallstedt played a heck of a game, and he had to make some crucial saves before the final puck went in. But Montreal was shooting the puck a lot. They outshot the Wild by a considerable amount because they get in the zone and they look for the shot, where the Wild too much were looking for the pass.
Much to my chagrin, looking back on my newspaper career, I obviously was lucky enough to visit and cover stuff in a lot of towns, but I never covered a hockey game in Montreal. I grew up watching it because I used to obviously watch the old Blackhawks team have some terrific series and heartbreaking series, I might add, against Montreal. You talked a little bit about the Montreal Canadiens experience and hockey there. Give us a little sense of what stands out for you over the decades that you've been going there and paying attention to things there. What makes it so distinctive, or has at least historically, in Montreal?
It's the atmosphere. It's like a party atmosphere, right? There was a good friend of mine that passed away about 2 years ago now, Ron Erickson, who owned Holiday Stores, and he was a very good hockey fan, and he was talking about how much he'd like to see hockey in other places. I said, Ron, one thing you got to do is you got to bring your wife. You have to go to Montreal and watch a hockey game. It's so different. It's so unique. The atmosphere in the building, it's like a party atmosphere all the way along. And so he said, okay, I'm going. I got him tickets. He went up there. He came back. He said, I can't believe it. He said, one of the best experiences I've had in my life. And if you like the game of hockey, you'll really enjoy being in an atmosphere like that because the crowd just seems to be having fun. They're so passionate about it. And one of the good things is they really enjoy the other team's good plays too. They obviously get upset with referees if they miss a penalty or they think they missed a penalty, but they like to watch good hockey, and whether it's their team or another team, they appreciate when they see hockey played at a high level and played real well. And they sing, they cheer, they yell, they scream. It's just a continuous 2.5 hours of, I think, pure joy.
I still also maintain, I don't remember what uniforms they had on last night, but the classic Montreal Canadiens uniforms, I don't think they're any better in all of sports.
I love it.
Yep.
Love it. Just love it. I mean, it's something, the original six, I have to say this, they had the best uniforms. And isn't it something that in this day and age where marketing, merchandising is everything to give additional dollars? Look at how many times other teams changed their jersey so that they could sell more. But the original six, they maintain their jerseys, I think, more than anybody else. Yeah. And they have iconic crests. the colors, the way their jerseys are done.
Yep.
Every one of them, you can't say that there's a bad jersey of any of the 6.
Unbelievable sweaters. You're 100% right. A couple texts have come in listening to us. One of them from 651 guy says, ask Louis if he thinks the Wild are big enough and physical enough on the back line to make a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a good question, but I do think so, even though we have 2 guys smaller in stature, and that being Spurgeon and Hughes, but the other 4 are, big enough. I was more concerned about that in the past, and I think that just the addition that we have that puts Middleton and Bogosian in 5 and 6. Those are big, strong guys, and they do kill penalties as well. So they don't just play 5-6; they kill penalties a lot, and they're very, very effective penalty killers. And I think that having that, they have enough. I'd be a little concerned if a guy like Hughes or Spurgeon would be getting hit all the time and couldn't react. But they're so good on their skates; they're hard to punish. You really have a difficult time to hit a guy like Hughes. It's just every game I watch him play, I'm just more impressed. In fact, I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I says, not having seen Hughes that much over the years because he's in Vancouver, and I didn't realize he was this good. And I say that because of his ability to escape checks, get away from people.
Yep.
And how he sees the ice, how fast he'll move that puck to an open man. He's a real treat, and I spend a little bit of time with him on this trip. And somebody was saying, he doesn't usually talk to guys a lot like that. But I met his parents at USA Hockey Development thing there, and we talked about that. And then we just talked about hockey in general. And what I was really excited about is how much he's enjoying his time in Minnesota, and especially playing with these guys. He says, he said, I never play with guys like this. He said, it's going to get even better. He said, the kind of skill they have in this team, he says, it's just so much fun to play. So I loved hearing that. I think that's a big plus in what Bill's going to have to do, Guerin's going to have to do when he tries to sign him. I think the fact that he's enjoying his teammates so much is going to be a big plus for the Wild.
I think you're pointing out something that has occurred to me in pretty much every sport, that you can stay, abreast of an entire league and try to cover a league and pay attention to as much as you can. But I don't think with any great player you get full appreciation for what makes them great the way you do when they join your team, because then you are literally watching them all of the time, and it changes it. And you may, like you said, you knew he was a great player, and you watch a lot of hockey, but there's still something different about when you're examining almost everything that guy does when he becomes a member of the team that you're following most closely and can see and will watch every game.
And I think that's the same for athletes in basketball.
I agree.
And
yep.
Even baseball in Minnesota. I don't think we miss how good the Viking players like Jefferson is, because the NFL gets so much exposure, and you're able to see as much as the home teams basically see. But in the other sports, Jefferson, Edward, it took a little time for people to realize that he's as good as he is. I think in baseball the same thing. And if you ever notice when you get the most valuable player awards or all-star awards, you could see in the voting how tilted it is to the East Coast. And the same thing happens in hockey. When you win an award in hockey, and I'm saying even in basketball, and then you're in the middle of the country, you're really showing something, because you're fighting a bit, and it's not just favoritism, it's just the fact that you're seeing the athletes more in the East, following them more, and you know more of it, so they get your vote.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've talked about this over the years on the radio without you, but I thought I read in the player voting for the All-Star game that Bronny James, LeBron's kid, got a few votes, which again for me falls under the classification of you're making kind of a mockery of the whole thing. You're not in, and I used to be in locker rooms for Pro Bowl voting, Louis. And it was hilarious because the assumption is always, well, the players know best. And there'd be players walking up to other players and say, well, who should I vote for save? You know, I don't even know who I should vote for in this thing. And it's just kind of funny because players, not all players are as connected, or in some cases, it doesn't sound like they're taking some of the voting very seriously, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Let me ask. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've heard that. I'm glad you said that because I've been in locker rooms when we used to have to vote, and some of the guys, I don't care who votes. Who'd you vote for? Who are you going to put down? And I've experienced it firsthand. And you're so correct saying that, and it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. Now, I'm going to read you a text. We've gotten one or two of these almost every day for at least a week, maybe longer. I want to get your reaction to it. This is from looks like 605 guy. Has the addition of Hughes actually hurt Kaprizov? It seems like Kaprizov has the puck less, and that's taking away from Kaprizov's scoring opportunities. What do you make of that? Because I've heard variations of that a lot.
No, I don't believe that at all. In fact, it's helped. You know what's funny? And I talked to Kaprizov about it after the game last night because if you saw some of the, maybe writings this morning that I was reading on the plane coming out of here. They're talking about Kaprizov. Obviously, when you don't score as much as you've been scoring, especially if you're a star like that, they start focusing on that. And Kaprizov met some of the press. He was one of the guys interviewed last night. He was coming out, and he came over and talked to me and said, these guys, I don't know what they do. They say, hey, we have trouble scoring. He said, I'm scoring. He's ninth in the league in scoring. He's been getting 2-3 points a game. I said, Kirill, what you have to tell him is when a goal is scored, that's scoring. And if you're involved in the goal, which you are, you're involved in the scoring. And I said, the fact is that you score goals so much and less assists. Now they're focusing on the fact that you're not scoring the goals. You just take a look at guys. Gretzky in points alone, assists alone, has got more points than anybody in the National Hockey League as goals and assists.
It's crazy. We have talked about that.
So assists mean a lot, but when they're focusing on you scoring and you're not scoring, then they're going to come to you. And if he was a centerman playing in the league, and every year to have 30 goals, but he'd have 90, a Kucherov, for instance. They don't go to Kucherov and say you don't score. The guy's been, the leading scorer in the league, and he had a lot of goals at one time. Now he's got maybe 2 for sure, maybe 3 times more assists than he gets goals. Nobody says anything about that, but our press, for some reason, has been focusing on that, and it just drives me nuts. Yeah, he's having a tough time. I want to tell you this, and I said it on the air last night. When he scores, they're going to come in bundles. He's just missing a little bit. He's missing the net a little bit. He's been robbed a couple of times, and even last night, he even flubbed a shot that he normally doesn't do because I'm sure he's pressing inside because he's feeling that everybody's wondering why he's not scoring. But when he starts scoring, they're going to come in bundles.
All right, we're getting down to where you don't have that many games left before the break. So is there anything important you think that the Wild need to establish or reestablish here? Are they in good enough shape with all the equity from the points that they've accrued that there's no big challenge that we need to worry about? It's the old question I always have of how important is it to go into this kind of a break feeling good about what you're doing?
Well, that's going to happen. And I think the biggest thing going into the break and coming out is the health of the team. They shut down Brodin. Brodin's going to miss the Olympics too. They made the decision to shut him down, and he's got a couple of concerning injuries. And rather than play through it, which he's been doing most of the season, I'm not going to talk about his injuries. I know what they are, and he's been battling through them. And I think the Wild's really smart, saying, "Look, we know we're going to be in the playoffs. We want to make sure this guy's ready because he's such a key person back in the defense for him." And it's with other guys, too. I mean, you got Boldy's going to be out. They're going to shut him down for a while, so he's essentially ready for the Olympics. Eriksson Ek's been out for a while. He's getting close to coming back. Bogosian should be back. But they're the Wild are playing this smart right now. They know they got the break coming up, and it's a long break. So you don't want to rush anybody into a situation where he could get re-injured, and you definitely don't want anybody, to get an injury bad enough so he can't play again. So the biggest thing they got to concern themselves with is being healthy after the break, with the situation where they're not, playing with injuries, where they might get, hurt enough that they can't participate in the playoffs.
Are you starting to get worried that this team's never going to get healthy to give itself the best chance?
Yeah, I've been worried about it because we've talked about it. They're playing so many games in such a short period because you have the Olympics now, so you cut off 2 weeks. You might have had 4 days for the All-Star game. Now you got 14 to 16, so you have to compress the rest of the games in the same schedule, which means you got more games and more nights. You have so many 3 and 4s, 3 games and 4 nights, and back-to-backs, and then even some 4 and 5 nights. With the flying, the intensity, and the, how meaningful these games are, it's going to happen. You're going to get injuries, and every team, for the most part, has had some, but it's going to be who's really healthy or the healthiest going into the playoffs that might be able to go all the way, because I really believe during the Olympics and right after the Olympics, you're going to see some odd injury, bad injuries, because this is really a tough schedule for these guys.
Last item for today, and we'll have plenty of time to follow up on this, but for now, will you be shocked if Guerin does not make another move that will be viewed as a significant move before the deadline?
No, I won't be shocked, because I don't know which assets you want to.
Well, that's the question, right?
You want to expand. I mean, to get something, you got to give something. You've already given up 2 first rounds for the next 2 years, and plus second, third, and fourth in some of the years, and how much of the future are you're going to give up? You see, they've got a real good team, a solid team. They're in a position where they can, go and do a lot of damage, and they're well coached, and they're playing a good structure. Now, stop and think about it. When last night, and I talked about it in the game, I said, Montreal, the best thing about this Montreal team are their best players are averaging 21 years old, which is about 5 years younger than the Wild's best players average. So what that means is, if you continue to give up too much of the future first, second round picks, you've already got 2 years that are gone. If you go in the third and fourth year, how do you, if you miss it, you don't get enough to make it, say, this year or next year.
Right.
How do you rebuild that team to be a force after that, as your core group now is aging quite a bit?
It's a fair question.
So I think, for me, what I think the best case scenario would be, if there's somebody that's he's an unrestricted free agent that won't sign, that is a valuable type player that Bill wants and needs, and he can make a deal for that, the price will be less. And because of how the team is playing and the team they have, it'll be attractive to somebody to come there to waive a no trade clause or say, I'll go there. And Bill would be in a position to say, well, he's unrestricted. I don't know if he's going to sign, but I'll be willing to take him if the price is low enough where even if he doesn't sign, I'm not going to be hurt as bad. And it does give me an opportunity to, first of all, go farther in the playoffs and also a chance to re-sign that person.
Have fun tonight. Big dinner tonight in Vegas?
Yeah, I have some clients that we're going out to dinner, and that's why I'm out here. The biggest convention they have here in Vegas is the World of Concrete, and that's what's going on right now. And by the way, some of the guys coming in that I was talking to were asking me if I was doing the game from home. They said, when are you going to be on with Dan? And they said, Barlito, we love listening to Dan. They love.
Excellent.
I said, you like playing with his name? They said, yeah, tell him we said that. I said, okay, I will.
Fair enough. By the way, have you ever attended what's it called, the Sphere, a concert at the Sphere? Have you been there yet? Have we talked about this?
No, because I'm waiting to go to something I want. The Eagles are going to be here in 2 nights, but I've seen the Eagles enough. And
okay,
I'm going to have to see the concert I want to see.
That's fair.
And they got some things going on tomorrow night, too, that they're going to be here, but it's not a good one. If you're going to go and see something there,
that makes sense.
Pricey. You better see what you want.
Save it for when it's really something you're looking forward to and they haven't seen before. That's a great point. Have a wonderful dinner tonight and safe travels, and we'll talk next week. Thanks, Luigi.
Look forward to talking to you. Thanks.
I appreciate you. Lou Nanne, brought to you by Kemp's. As always, Kessler will join about a half hour from now. There's a lot to get caught up on, even since we had Lou Ragoose on at about 3:15. Top 5 at 5 is next. What do we got?
More on the hockey club and the Timberwolves after another puzzling loss.